I was sitting in my apartment in Seattle when the email arrived from my sister. Subject line, Final Settlement Details. 3 years of legal battles reduced to a PDF attachment. My name is Daniel, 37, former project manager for a tech company that had gone public 2 years ago. The IPO had made me comfortable, not rich, but enough that I could choose my next move carefully. I'd used part of that money to buy my grandfather's old lakefront property in Maine when he needed to move into assisted living. The plan was to renovate, maybe retire there early. The property had been in our family for 40 years. I opened the attachment and scanned the document, my stomach tightening as I read. According to my sister Elaine's lawyers, I was entitled to exactly $47,380 from the $600,000 sale of our grandfather's property, a property I had paid for entirely. The document claimed I had verbally promised Elaine $250,000 because she needed it more as a single mother. The rest would go to family expenses that were never defined. I closed my laptop, poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, and walked to the window overlooking Elliott Bay. I didn't slam things. I didn't call her screaming. That's not who I am. Instead, I watched the ferries cross the water, methodically planning what would come next. My sister had always been the family favorite. For years younger, always in some kind of crisis that required rescuing. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who would be fine no matter what. When our parents split the cost of her wedding but gave me a $200 gift card for mine, I said nothing. When they paid for her master's degree but told me to take loans for mine, I worked nights to make it happen. Daniel understands, they'd say. Daniel doesn't need the help. The bourbon burned going down. I set the glass on the counter and opened my laptop again. I replied to Elaine's email with 2 words, received. Thanks. Then I called Marcus, my college roommate who had become one of Seattle's most ruthless real estate attorneys. They did what? Marcus asked after I explained the situation. His voice had that quiet intensity one recognized from our law school days, before I dropped out to join the startup. And you have the original purchase documents? Everything, I said. Deed in my name only. Bank transfers from my personal account. Even emails where Elaine specifically says she doesn't want any part of the property because it's too much responsibility. Send it all over. And Daniel, don't contact your family again until we talk. Not a word. I agreed and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through recent photos. There was Elaine at Christmas, hugging me, thanking me for the gift I'd bought my nephew. There were my parents, asking when I was going to settle down like your sister has. There I was, smiling in every picture, the good son, the reliable brother. The family ATM, apparently. I got up and made coffee, then opened my personal safe and spread the documents across my dining table. The deed to the lake house, the bank transfers, the emails, the text messages. I'd always been meticulous with records. Borderline obsessive, my ex-wife Claire used to say before she left for someone more spontaneous. What she never understood was that in my family, being careful wasn't a personality quirk, it was survival. 3 days later, Marcus called. I've reviewed everything. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. The property was entirely yours, purchased with your funds, maintained with your money. No verbal promise of a gift is enforceable here, especially not one this large without any documentation. So what's our move? I asked. Well, that depends on what you want, Marcus said. We could settle quickly, get you the full sale amount minus their legal fees they've already incurred. Or what? Or we could make sure they understand exactly what they've done. That would take longer, cost more, but from what you've told me about your family dynamic, it might be necessary to prevent this from happening again. I thought about decades of being the family safety net, of hearing Daniel will understand, while watching opportunities and resources flow to my sister, of my parents' constant refrain that I didn't need the money as justification for their favoritism. The second option, I said. I want them to understand consequences. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then here's what we do. 2 weeks later, I flew to Portland, Maine, rented a car, and drove to the small town where I'd grown up. I checked into the Harborview in under a different name. I'd timed my arrival deliberately. My sister had organized a family dinner at her house that evening to celebrate the sale and discuss the distribution. She didn't know I'd declined her invitation or that I was even in town. Instead of going to dinner, I drove past the lake house one last time. The new owners were already moving in, a young couple with 2 small children. I watched them unloading boxes, laughing, planning their future in a place I'd hoped would be part of mine. I felt a pang, not of regret, but of resignation. This chapter was closing. I just needed to make sure it closed on my terms. The next morning, I met Marcus at a coffee shop downtown. He'd flown in late the previous night. "Ready?" he asked, sliding a folder across the table. "As I'll ever be," I replied. We drove to my sister's house in separate cars. I parked down the street and watched Marcus knock on the door. Elaine answered, confusion crossing her face. She'd never met Marcus. I waited 10 minutes, then walked up the path to the front door, which Marcus had left slightly ajar, as planned. I could hear voices from the living room. My sister's high-pitched protest, my father's authoritative tone trying to take control of the situation, my mother's attempts to smooth things over. Then Marcus's calm, professional voice cutting through it all. "Forged signatures on 3 separate documents," he was saying as I entered. The power of attorney was never notarized by any licensed notary in the state of Maine. We've confirmed this with the Secretary of State's office. My family froze when they saw me. Elaine was the first to recover. "Daniel, thank God. This man is making ridiculous accusations." "Mr. Lawson is my attorney," I said quietly. "And everything he's saying is true." The silence that followed felt physical, like a weight pressing down on all of us. My mother looked confused, my father angry. Elaine's face had gone pale. "Perhaps Mr. Bennett would like to see the evidence himself," Marcus suggested, opening his briefcase. He removed several documents and placed them on the coffee table. "Here we have Daniel's original deed to the property, purchased solely with his funds. Here are bank statements showing all maintenance and tax payments coming from Daniel's accounts over the past 3 years. Here are emails from Elaine explicitly declining any interest in the property." My father leaned forward, scanning the documents, his frown deepening. My mother sat perfectly still, hands clasped in her lap. "And here," Marcus continued, placing a final set of papers on the table, "we have the documents submitted to the title company for the sale, including a power of attorney supposedly signed by Daniel and notarized in Seattle on March 3rd of this year." He looked at me. "Where were you on March 3rd, Daniel?" "Tokyo," I replied. "Business trip. I have passport stamps, hotel receipts, and meeting minutes to prove it." Marcus nodded. "We've already confirmed with the notary listed that they never signed this document and that their stamp was forged. That's federal wire fraud, identity theft, and real estate fraud. Each carries significant penalties." Elaine started crying. Not her usual dramatic sobs designed to bring attention and sympathy, but silent tears of someone who knows they're caught. My father stood up. "This is ridiculous. There must be some explanation, some misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I interrupted, "was thinking I wouldn't find out, or that I wouldn't care, or maybe that I would just accept it because that's what I've always done. Accepted less, asked for nothing, solved my own problems while this family drained me dry. That's not fair." My mother finally spoke. "We've always supported you. You've just never needed." "Don't," I said, raising my hand. "Don't say I never needed the money. I worked 60-hour weeks for years while paying off student loans you never helped with. I delayed buying a home for a decade while you put the down payment on Elaine's. I've helped with family expenses, medical bills, car repairs, never asking for anything back. And when I finally buy something for myself, something that mattered to me, you all decided I didn't deserve to keep the profits." No one spoke. Marcus quietly gathered the documents and returned them to his briefcase. "Here's what happens now," I continued. "The title company has been notified of the fraud. The funds from the sale have been frozen pending investigation. My attorney has prepared a settlement agreement that will give me the full proceeds minus your legal expenses to date. If you sign it, I won't press criminal charges." "Criminal charges?" my father sputtered. "Against your own sister? Your own family?" I looked at him steadily. "Yes, because family doesn't steal from family." "We weren't stealing," Elaine said, finding her voice. "We just thought, with your tech money and my kids, and mom and dad's retirement. You thought I wouldn't miss $250,000? I asked. Or you thought I didn't deserve it? Which is it?" No one answered. Marcus removed the settlement agreement from his briefcase and placed it on the table with a pen. "You have until the end of the day," I said, standing up. "After that, we go to the FBI with evidence of wire fraud." I walked out without looking back. Marcus followed a few minutes later, finding me leaning against my rental car. "They'll sign," he said confidently. "Your father was already reading through it when I left." "I know," I replied. We drove back to the coffee shop. I sat across from Marcus, turning my cup in slow circles. Was I too harsh? Marcus considered this. "They forged your signature, lied to a title company, and tried to steal $250,000 from you. If anything, you're being generous, not pursuing criminal charges." I nodded slowly. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "The papers are signed. Elaine is distraught. Your mother is beside herself. I hope you're satisfied." I showed the message to Marcus, who shook his head. "Still making you the villain." "Classic. I expected nothing less," I said. Marcus left to collect the signed agreement, while I drove to the lake one last time. I found a quiet spot on the shore, a place I'd fished with my grandfather as a boy. He'd been the one person in the family who never compared me to my sister, who appreciated my methodical nature, who taught me that patience and preparation mattered more than flash and charm. "I did what you would have done, Grandpa," I said to the water. I stood up for myself. My phone rang. "Marcus." "It's done," he said. "Settlement signed. Title company is releasing the funds to your account within 48 hours. Minus my fees, of course." "Of course," I said, smiling slightly. "Thanks, Marcus." "What now?" he asked. "Now I go home and start over," I said. Seattle doesn't feel right anymore. When I returned to my hotel, there was an envelope that had been slipped under my door. Inside was a note from my mother. I didn't know what Elaine was doing. I should have asked more questions. "I'm sorry we made you feel like your needs didn't matter." No excuses, no guilt trips. Maybe a first. 3 days later, I was back in Seattle, my apartment feeling smaller somehow, less like home. I opened my laptop and began searching for properties. Not in Maine. Those memories were tainted now. But Montana caught my eye. Big sky country. Room to breathe. Distance from a family that had never really seen me. A month after that, I closed on 40 acres outside Bozeman with a small cabin that needed work. I gave notice at my job, packed what mattered, and drove east. The tech company stock options I'd held on to vested completely the day before I left Seattle, adding another layer of security to my new beginning. On my first night in the cabin, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. My phone had been silent for weeks. No calls from my parents, no text from Elaine. I'd expected guilt trips, angry accusations, attempts to make me change my mind. Instead, nothing. It was as if they'd finally realized I meant what I said. The silence should have hurt, I suppose. Family was supposed to be forever. But sitting there in the growing dark, I felt something unexpected, peace. The kind that comes not from forgiveness. I wasn't there yet, but from finally being honest. From refusing to play the role they'd assigned me. From valuing myself enough to say no. 6 months later, my cabin renovation was complete. I'd used some of the lake house money to add a second bedroom, upgrade the kitchen, build a proper office where I could consult remotely for tech startups. I was making less than in Seattle, but I needed less too. I got a dog, a rescued border collie named Max who needed space to run as much as I did. I met my neighbors, joined a local hiking group, started volunteering at the community library. Slowly, carefully, I built a life that was entirely mine, not defined by anyone else's expectations. The only family contact came in December, a Christmas card from my mother with a short note. "We understand now. We're sorry. The door is open when you're ready." No pressure, no deadline. I put the card on my mantle, but didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I took Max for a long hike up to a ridge overlooking the valley, my valley now. As we reached the top, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Title company prosecuted Elaine for fraud independently. She got probation, community service, and a fine. Thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time, then put my phone away without responding. The consequences I'd wanted had come, but they brought no satisfaction, no sense of justice served. Just the sad recognition that some broken things stay broken. Max nudged my hand, impatient to continue our hike. I scratched behind his ears and looked out at the mountains stretching to the horizon. "Forward, not back," I told him. He wagged his tail as if he understood perfectly. That evening, I built a fire in the wood stove and opened my laptop. For the first time in months, I typed an email to my mother. "The door is open here too. But we enter as equals or not at all." I hit send, then closed the computer. Whatever happened next, reconciliation, continued silence, something in between, would happen on my terms, not theirs. After a lifetime of being the family member who didn't need the money, I had finally claimed what I did need: respect. And that, unlike the lake house, was something I would never sell.